Hey everyone, Albana from Bulgarian Mama's Cooking here, and in today's video I'm going to show you how to make this puffy, delicious, sweet condensed milk bread with Turkish delight. So if this sounds interesting, then keep on watching. This type of bread in Bulgaria is also known as Kozunak. And before we go further with this video, support the mama by hitting the subscribe button. I promise you, you will love my recipes, and let's get started. So first I'm going to proof the yeast in some warm milk, and to that I'm also adding an egg and some sugar. Now here all the ingredients are room temperature and the milk is slightly warm in the microwave for about 45 seconds. I'll cover that with a kitchen towel, and that goes in the oven with the light on. Next step is to sieve the flour with the salt. Now I do recommend that you sieve the flour in every occasion that you use it for. It's just for better consistency. And now here is the activated yeast. Look how beautiful this looks. Now I'm going to combine it with the flour. To that I'm also adding the slightly, very slightly warm condensed milk, and to the mixer it goes. Now for this recipe I'm using my hand mixer that is going to knead instead of me. However, if you prefer to knead it by hand, I also have a video that I'm going to link up here and in the description for how exactly that's done by hand. Now here I'm using a spatula to combine wet and dried ingredients, just because I don't want my kitchen to be covered in flour as soon as the mixer starts kneading. Of course, I'm using the hook attachment for this purpose, and then I'm just gonna let the mixer do its job. So I'm turning the mixer on low speed, and meanwhile I'm going to take care of the Turkish delight. For this recipe I'm using different flavors. Turkish delight and Eastern European stores or ethnic stores are the best place to find the Turkish delight, so check those out. After I cut them in very small pieces, I'm going to combine them with some crushed walnuts, and I used my bullet blender for the purpose. And then I'm also going to grind some lemon zest, only the lemon zest. And to that I also added some vanilla flavor. However, it looks like my camera didn't cut it. I'm not really sure what happened, but yes, add some vanilla flavor to that as well. Now back to the future dough. As you can see, a dough is already starting to form. Now is the time for butter. So now this butter has to be soft, and I'm going to start by gradually adding it to the dough. Now here is important that you do that gradually to give time to the butter to fully incorporate into the dough. After the butter is in, give time to the mixer to do its job. Now it may seem that you need to add a little tiny bit more flour, but don't do that. Give it some extra minutes before you actually go ahead and add more flour, because adding more flour will not lead you to good results. So give time to the mixer to do its job. So now as you can see, the dough is shiny. It's absolutely beautiful. Look at that. I did not add any extra flour. And now I'm going to knead that by hand just for a little tiny bit on my kitchen counter. Now it is my belief that when you work with flour and when you work with dough and just that type of products, it's good to touch them and to see the consistency and to feel it a little bit. As you can see, I have a little tiny bit of flour on the side, and I used maybe a gram or two. However, this is not a lot of flour, so it's perfectly okay. As you can see, the dough is no longer sticking to the countertops, so that means it's absolutely ready. Now why do I need it the way that I do, and I'm showing in the video? Because I want to make sure that the gluten is very well activated, because the gluten is the one that is going to give me this puffiness in the bread. So when you work with dough, it's very important that first of all you choose a flour that is high in protein. King Arthur is a great example, or Five Roses that you can find at ethnic stores, and it's cheaper. So this is a great example of flour that is high in protein, and it's actually going to give you better results when you make bread. So now you're looking for a stretchy dough, and here is how to check if the dough is stretchy enough. Just get a little tiny piece of it and try to stretch it in between your hands and fingers, just like so, and see, this is the result you're looking for. So now it's time to let the dough proof. So right now I'm taking the air out of the dough and I'm going to transfer it into a bowl that is going to be lightly oiled. You can see here a small bubble is beginning to form. That means that this dough is definitely most certainly ready for proofing. And for this recipe I'm using sunflower oil. I definitely do not recommend that you try using olive oil. Sunflower oil works best with that type of dough. If there is any extra oil after you transfer the dough, definitely remove it. You don't want a lot of oil for this dough. And then cover it with a towel and put it in a warm environment. What I recommend that you do is put it in your oven and just turn the light on. So here, if the dough is not rising, that means two things. It's either not warm enough around the dough or the yeast is expired. So definitely check the expiration date of the yeast that you're using. And again, you don't want the temperature to be hot. You just want a warm environment in order for the dough to rise. Alright, so about an hour and a half later, this is how the dough looks like. Now, isn't it beautiful? I'm gonna punch the air out just by doing so, and I'm going to transfer it to my kitchen counter. I'll give it a quick knead just to shape it, and then I'm going to get my dough cutter and try to cut it in 3 even parts. Now, it is my recommendation that you don't play with a kitchen scale here, because it is my belief that in this stage for this particular bread, it's not a good idea to overwork the dough. So just do your best, and even if it's not even, is not a big deal. It's gonna be fine. So don't overwork it. Just cut it in 3 and you are done. Or at least done with the cutting part, but not with the bread making. So now look at this dough. Isn't it beautiful? It's absolutely gorgeous, and I'm telling you, it's so satisfying to work this dough. So first I'm gonna work the dough out with my hands, and then I'm going to use my rolling pin to help me. Now you are looking at about 20 centimeters long and about 10 centimeters wide piece of dough. Again, try not to overwork this dough, just very gently and carefully with the rolling pin and with your hands. And then I'm going to stuff this generously with the Turkish delight filling that I just made. I'm telling you, this smells so delicious. I definitely recommend you to try it. So now I'm gonna start closing the 2 ends of the dough. Just by doing so, I'm gonna form a roll. Now it is very important that this piece of dough is not super thin, because if it is, then it's most likely going to break, and that's not what you want. As you can see here, I'm evenly distributing the filling, and then I'm turning the both ends of this roll into opposite directions. I mean, it might look complicated, but trust me, it is not. So just do the very same thing with the rest of the dough. And now it's time to braid the bread. And here is how it's done. And this is why I love video recipes, because explaining how to braid a bread is kind of difficult. So just by showing it in the video, it makes it way easier for everybody. So just enjoy. Okay, so now the braid is done, and I'm going to transfer it into my 9-inch pan. Now if you prefer to bake this in a loaf pan, then go for it, but I wanted to give it a different shape this time, so I'm gonna use my 9-inch cheesecake pan. I usually make cheesecake or my tres leches cake here. However, I'm gonna use it for my sweet condensed milk bread with Turkish delight this time. And here, as you saw, I just tucked one end of the braid underneath the other, and this is how this bread is shaped. I'll cover this again with a kitchen towel and back in the oven with the light on until it doubles in size. Remember, this may take different time. It may take 45 minutes, it may take an hour, so keep an eye. Now look at this beauty. It is time for the egg wash, and for the egg wash I'm going to use egg yolk and some milk. Again, it's important that these are both room temperature. Now I'll use my silicone brush to mix it well to combine, as well as to apply it on top of the bread. Now, if you made a mess while applying the egg wash like I did, be sure to clean it before you put it in the oven, because otherwise it may most likely actually burn and is not going to be pleasant. Make sure to preheat your oven at 350 and then bake the bread at the lower part of your oven for 30 minutes. In the middle of the baking process, the bread may look done, but it's actually not, because you're gonna check it with a toothpick, and the toothpick's not gonna come out clean because it's not ready yet. Then definitely cover with a foil and put it back in the oven for another 15 minutes or until it's done. Alright, so after the 38th minute, I took it out of the oven and I tasted it with the toothpick. The only thing that came out was the Turkish delight, so that means the bread is done. So I'm gonna let this bread to cool down for about 10 to 15 minutes, and meanwhile I will prepare the glaze, as I like to call it, that is going to consist from butter and condensed milk. In the microwave it goes for about 20 to 25 seconds or until the butter is melted. So now that the bread has cooled down for about 5 to 10 minutes, just run a knife between the bread and the ring and then release the ring and the bread is out. Now look at this beauty, it's absolutely the best, super soft and delicious and most aromatic sweet condensed milk bread that you will ever make. And the last thing that you need to do before you go ahead and enjoy this bread is generously apply the glaze on top of the bread. Again, here you can go for more, you can go for less, it's really upon your choosing. And if you go ahead and give this recipe a try, I would love to read about your experience with my recipe in the comments, so be sure to come back to this video and leave me a comment with the results. Thank you for watching and supporting Bulgarian Mommy's Cooking. If you enjoyed this video, give it a big thumbs up. If you have not yet and you're interested in such recipes, be sure to hit the subscribe button with the bell on so that you know every time when I post a new video recipe. And I will talk to you very soon. Bye for now.